Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do, see all this hard fat right here? This is fat that is like really hard. It'll never cook down ever. So we're gonna cut this one out. This may not be the way all the pros do it, but this is the way I do it, and you know, it works really well. I'm gonna cut this hard fat out. I don't normally cut all the soft fat, but I cut a lot of that out. Some of this, oops, sorry about that. Some of this fat will, it's good fat. You want it to render down, but one thing you want to keep in mind is rub will not stick to the fat. It'll cook out, and when it cooks out, so will your rub. Rub's going to be really simple. Nothing but salt, kosher salt, and coarse ground black pepper. Some people do 20, 30, some, you know, however you want to do it. I do it 50-50 just because I like a lot of salt on the meat. Prepping it tonight, it won't go on until tomorrow because if you put a lot of salt on the meat tonight, it wouldn't do nothing but dry it out. So this is kind of what I tend to call a really raw brisket, meaning that it hasn't been trimmed out. See all this silver stuff here? This is called silver skin, and it needs to come off because the rub just won't stick to it. And I'll show you how I get a little bit of it off, but it's kind of time consuming, so I won't do a lot of it on the video. Just basically pull it off like so. You take a little, this is like a filleting knife, and you don't want to cut down into the meat, you just want to cut that off. And people are going to say you're cutting the fat, you're cutting flavor, yeah, whatever. I don't really buy that. This is just like a little thin membrane. Some people cut it off, some don't. I think it makes the meat look better. But I also think it keeps a lot of the smoke from getting to it. This fat back here I won't cut off, but I will cut off all this little silver skin right here. And it's really thin. It's like paper thin. You can see how thin's coming off the meat. And you gotta be really careful not to cut into the meat. You don't want to take any more off than you have to. You can almost see the blade through the meat. So anyway, I'll get back to that. I'm gonna turn it over. You're gonna see how thick this is right here. This is what you pay for that is useless. A lot of people will say you got to have all this fat. This fat is hard as a rock anyway. And I'm gonna cut most of it off. I'm gonna cut it off down to about, some people say 1/4 of an inch. I'll cut it down to about a 1/2 inch in the middle. And then the rest of it will render down. I'm not gonna go any thinner here. This right up here, I don't know what it's called. I'm sure some of my cooking buddies, Jason Burley, somebody could probably tell you what this fat's actually called. To me, it's just dirty. It looks bad. I don't know if it renders down or not. It might, I don't know. I've never left it on to find out. So I like to take this down till it's about 1/4 of an inch, between 1/4 and a 1/2 inch, because you definitely want that fat to render, but you don't want it to be so much that you don't get any flavor in on the meat from your rub. And I rub both sides. I know some people don't. Some people only rub the meat side. And, you know, some of those people are world champions, and I'm not. But then again, I don't think competition meat is all it's cracked up to be as far as flavor and taste and what the average redneck would eat. So, anyway, it's kind of what I do. I wish that I could find a really good butcher that wouldn't charge, you know, I wouldn't have to mortgage my house, that they could come in here and cut some of this stuff off, because you're paying for all of this. This is a nice looking brisket. It's much nicer looking than the one I saw at Publix the other day for $176. My father-in-law got this one. I think it was like 70 bucks. Really nice looking piece of meat. And so we're gonna cut it off. We're gonna put it on in the morning, probably around between 4 and 5 a.m. And it'll cook for probably cook for 12, 13 hours. we'll pull it out, and you see all this fat that I'm cutting off. I'm cutting it off, and you can still see I've got a 1/2 inch of fat right there. So I'm gonna cut that down till I get to about 1/4 of an inch. And that dirty fat's what I call it. I just don't think it looks good. It probably has nothing to do with flavor. And I know this sounds crazy, but I once took a course with Aaron Franklin, and he said, make all your briskets aerodynamic. I don't really understand that. I guess the smoke rolls over it better. But I just try to make it look pretty, because eventually you're going to open it up and people are going to see what it looks like. So, and two, you can see this fat has a real, just nasty looking flavor to, or color to it. So I just don't like that. So now get down in here, and this brown looking fat, I have no idea what the official title of that is. It just looks like hell, so I don't like it. So, and again, the more fat you have, more juice you'll have mostly, but keep in mind the rub will not stick to this fat. As the fat renders off, so will your rub. So you just got to be careful and not cut too deep, because you can't put the fat back on once you take it off. So I'm going to take it back over. Still got a lot of hard fat right here, and a lot of people don't want to go to a butcher. We don't have a good butcher around here that I'm aware of, but here in a minute I'm going to show you what the weight of this brisket was, and then I'm going to show you what how much fat we just took off of it. So be back in just a second. Okay, cool. So you can see this brisket weighed 11.86 pounds. It's a really great price though, $5.98 a pound. That's unbelievable. Last one I saw was 16 something a pound. And then out of that 11.86 pounds, you can see 2.68 pounds of fat that we just pulled off of it. And that'll pretty much be all the fat we carve off of it. So that would have saved $12. Actually, yeah, $12 had they cut that off. Had they cut that fat off. So what we'll do with this fat is we will save some of it. We'll probably render some of it down. It's great for seasoning skillets, cast iron skillets, but that's a whole new video. We'll catch back with you when we light the fires about 4 a.m. Okay, so now we've got the brisket out. It's room temperature. Just kind of rubbing it down with a little bit of olive oil. Talking a little quiet right now because I'm the only one up. And we're fixing to put the rub on it. You can see the rub is 50-50 coarse ground black pepper and kosher salt. And I'm gonna put it on pretty thick and then kind of rub it in. Make a nice thick coat on here. And like I said, I put it on fairly thick here. And we didn't put this on last night because we didn't want it to dry anything out. So we're going to put it on and let it sit while the fire comes up to temp. We lit our fire just a little bit ago. And we've got the fire cooking down with a nice small piece of hickory wood on it. I'm not going to put as much rub on this side because obviously it's the fat side, but it's salt and pepper, so you can never have too much. Sure to get the edges. Okay, and at this point, we're gonna let it sit till the fire comes up to about, till the smoker pit comes up to about 250, and then we'll put the meat on. Okay, so it's just starting to get daylight here. Temp on the smoker is right about 260, 265, and we are putting the brisket on. Alrighty. Okay. A little bit about the smoker, if anybody doesn't know. I know it's a little dark right now, but this is a reverse flow smoker. Basically meaning that the wood box is right down here. That's where the fire is. There's an opening right under this grate right here, and there's a plate that goes all the way down to right here. So what that does is that forces the heat and the smoke to travel from the wood box down here all the way over and up and then back, and then the stack is sitting right here. These smokers, I really like them. They're a little bit more picky than a direct smoker, in my opinion. They depend on the draft a whole lot. You have to have the front of the smoker down just a little bit in order for the grease, the rendered fat and whatever to run out. And there's a drain underneath right down there to where it drains out as it renders. So I use this little digital level, and I try to keep it, to start with, I try to keep it relatively flat. I know it's dark, you can't hardly see it, but we are actually at 1.2 degrees up on the tongue end of the smoker. That allows enough draft to keep the fire going, and it still drains pretty good down on the bottom. Just by moving, raising or lowering the tongue of the trailer there, you can adjust this temperature by plus or minus 10-12 degrees, because when you raise and lower the tongue, you're actually adding or taking away the draft in the smoker, which pulls heat. More draft pulls more heat, burns the fire quicker. Less draft, less heat, fire lasts a little longer. So anyway, a little background on the smoker itself, and we're gonna let this cook for a few minutes. As you can see, the fire is all mellowed out, so we'll let it cook. This is where I keep my wood up here. The wood we'll be using is chunks about this size, and a lot of people use post oak wood. Some use, I guess, white oak. I prefer hickory, so that's what we're going to be using. Just one little thing. When we lit the fire, I didn't show you because it was so dark out here. This is the burner that I use to put under my grate. Hooks to a propane tank, and so that's how I start my fire instead of using lighter fluid. It takes, to light a bag of charcoal, or even just if I'm just going wood and not using any charcoal, with that burner it takes about 6 minutes to light my fire. Now that's pushing. Your grate in the firebox where your wood and charcoal and all sits, it will become glowing red in just a matter of about 1.5 minutes. So really quick, lighting the fire, and you don't have lighter fluid in your box. So that's it. It's just starting to get daylight. Okay, so we just added some wood to the wood box, so you can see the temp jumped up a little bit to about 320. So it's a good time to open it up a little bit. We're going to spray it, just a little bit of moisture in it. This is nothing but pure water, and all it does is just kind of keep it moist a little bit. Spraying it with a real fine mist, because you don't want to knock the rub off, the salt and the pepper. And we're just going to spray it up a little bit, check it out, make sure everything looks good. It's been in now for roughly about an hour and 20 minutes now. So, smoker lid back down, seal it up. You can see our temp drop down while we had it open to about 275. I'm sure that will come up. Okay, so fixing to check the brisket. Been on now for, let's see, what, about 4.5 hours. Yeah, that's looking edible. I think that's gonna be all right. So while I've got it open, right now I'm putting a little mist on it. This is nothing more than a little water and a little apple juice. And then while we got it, I know it's nowhere near done, but we're gonna just check the temp, see where we're at. And right now, okay, so we're at 132 in the fat part. I'm gonna come up here, see where we're at. Okay, down in the flat, we're at 135. So still got a good bit to go. We're gonna try to get it up to about 200, 204, 203, somewhere right above 200. And but when it gets to about 160, 165, we're gonna pull it out and wrap it with butcher paper and stick it back in for a while.
All right, so how long has the brisket been on the smoker at this point?
We put it on about 10 minutes after 5
All
this
right,
morning.
I'm gonna get a close-up. And so what are you doing right now?
Just putting some moisture onto it. This is water, a little bit of apple juice, and basically just pulling up the moisture. Keep it from getting dry.
Well, all right. And underneath, I see it looks like a dish with liquid in it.
Yep, that's just water to add some moisture into the pit, to keep it from having the air from being so dry. It just adds some moisture in there, keeps the meat moist. So right now the meat is in a stall. It's around 145, 146.
And when you wrap it, exactly what does wrapping it do? Does it just keep the heat in, or?
It stops the browning. It stops the smoke from coloring the meat anymore, making it darker than what you want it to be. And it keeps the smoke off the meat, and it also holds the moisture in, and it continues to cook, and it just prevents the meat from all this juice you see from rendering out. The wrap will hold it in.
Okay. What is the ideal temperature? I know there's a couple different ways you can do brisket. Is there, I know with butt, if you want to slice it, you do it to one temp. If you want to pull it, you do it to another. Is it the same way with a brisket?
No, well, yes, with a brisket, if I get mine to 200, because this fat part right here, you can see the grain and how the grain's running. This will usually be sliced. I got grease on my hands. This will usually be sliced up here. This back here will cut in and make burn ends, which is little 1-inch squares, and this will be pulled back here. So at 200, we'll take it out. 200, 203, we'll take it out, and we will wrap it, leave it wrapped up in the butcher paper, but we'll also wrap it up in a towel, and we'll put it in a cooler for 30, 45 minutes and let it rest. And what that does is allow the juice to be sucked back into the meat. And then we'll take it out and slice and pull.
Now, earlier you were explaining about the reverse flow smoker and how this works. And I'm sure that you have shown putting, more wood in. How often do you have to put wood in? Does it just depend on the temperature outside? Does this type smoker, does it vary based on the temperature outside as well?
Yeah, it varies on the humidity, the temperature, how much wind. A reverse flow smoker is really dependent on the draft that's coming across the stack and through the vents. So if you've got a lot of wind, it's going to go through more wood if you have your vents open, because you got more draft. If you've got less wind and you're real high humidity, then you're gonna have to create more. You're gonna have to create more draft, and you can do that by raising and lowering the tongue of the trailer.
All right, so I don't know if we can see it on the actual video, but with the smoke that's coming out, I have heard you say before, oh, I don't like the look of that smoke, or it's dirty smoke. What does that mean?
Yeah, smoke, if you got a dark brown or a black smoke, then that means that your fire is not getting enough oxygen. So you want enough oxygen to where the fire burns clean. And a perfectly run fire, the smoke will either be really light blue, kind of like sky blue, or it will be non-existent. You'll just see heat coming up. You won't even see any smoke. But the only time you should see any kind of dark colored smoke is when you first put your wood in, or when you put new wood in. It should smoke. And what I usually do when I put the wood in is I leave the door open about like that, and that just allows more air to get in to the fire, and it burns cleaner. You can see how your flames are burning now. It's got a lot of oxygen. It's burning nice and clean. You can see the smoke up out of the stack.
So to regulate your temperature, these here, if you want it to burn hotter, you open them up more. If you want it to burn slower,
I usually leave those vents all the way open, and I control it with the stack up here, because if those are open, it's taking the wind in, and you can close this and basically shut the smoker down, or you can open it all the way. And also, by raising and lowering the front of the smoker, you tilt it up, it'll pull more oxygen out of here, to pull more heat, because you're giving it more draft. If you lower it, you're taking the draft away, which is pulling less heat, so it's going to burn less wood. But right now, I'm at 1.2% on an incline. That way it still drains underneath the excess grease, which you don't really have a lot here, but it also is just the perfect amount of draft for this to maintain, where you can see it now, right at 275.
And so are you cooking this one a little bit hotter than what
Yes.
you normally would?
Yeah, normally we cook brisket at 225 to 250, and we'll do it for 16, 18 hours. This is a smaller brisket, so we're doing it a little bit quicker in order to have it ready for dinner tonight.
And is that because your lovely wife requested a brisket fairly late last night?
Of course, and whatever she requests, that's what she gets.
It's because I am a princess. All right, so folks, the only other question that I really have for Billy at this time is, what time are we eating?
About 5:30.
All right, 5:30. We will show it when it comes off the smoker and how we wrap it, I'm here for moral support and for the deliciousness. I'm not here for anything else. So this is all the Billy show today. That's pretty.
Does look good, doesn't it? Okay. We've got past the stall. We're really around 155. Normally we do this at 160, but we're going to do it now.
All right, so he's going to wrap it up. And that just keeps it from getting too much color, right?
Yes. Yep. You can see it's not quite done yet. It's getting there. Getting to be tender enough to pull. This down here is not. This will be the sliced. So we're going to wrap it up with butcher paper instead of aluminum foil.
Now, you mentioned it got past the stall.
Yes.
What does that mean?
The stall is simply where is the moisture in the meat starts evaporating, and it actually cools down the meat. The meat will get to a certain temp and just not go any higher. So when it stalls, it takes a little bit for the meat to start developing the moisture again. And this stall lasted about an hour and 50 minutes, which was pretty good.
So the temperature basically stays exactly the same for an hour or so?
It stayed at 152 on the flat to about 158, 159 on the point for about an hour and a half, almost an hour and 55 minutes, almost 2 hours. So we passed that now. We've got it wrapped. We're gonna put it back in and let it go till it's done.
Well, all right.
At about 205 degrees.
I can't wait.
Do your thing.
All right, so the brisket is now out of the smoker. It's sitting here. We're fixing to start slicing it up. So I'm gonna let Billy slice it. He's getting things kind of prepared and ready. And I'm gonna show you some of the other stuff that we have to go along with it. So my mother has been a busy little bee today. She's made baked beans. And then we've got some potato salad, some macaroni salad. I made some pico that I have already tried because, you know, of course you have to taste everything. And it is phenomenal. So what we're going to do with the brisket is Billy's gonna do some slices, do some chopped. So I have sandwiches that we're gonna make, and I'm also gonna make some brisket nachos, which are delicious. That's pretty. Yummy.
Here. That is some good brisket
Stuff.
right there.
Alright, so here is just a sandwich. I toasted the bun with a little bit of butter and garlic. And then that is brisket with provolone cheese melted on it. And then I have a little bit of brisket nachos. Oh yeah.